We have 2 minutes to start. Whoever is still taking tea, it will be a working tea. And at this moment, I would like to welcome our very own, our mentor, Madame Helen Vili. You're welcome. And I'll be requesting you to take center stage at the podium there. Please, you'll be joining Madame Salome and Martin and Mr. Kakuru. Please remain seated at the podium. Then we shall have the board chair as well joining the team. There. You'll, Madame Helen, kindly take the board chair with you to the podium. During the break, I had people discussing about the need to buy washing machines, unpaid care work. Will the washing machine solve the issue? Now that we know, we need now to pave way to see how we can better utilize the data, how we can integrate other data sources into statistics to provide the much needed gender statistics. And this will be presented other than Madame Salome Ofono from Bridge Consultants. She'll be discussing how we can integrate data from the civil societies. Kindly welcome Madame Salome Ofono from Bridge Consultants.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Salome Ofono is my name, and I am a consultant in gender and governance. And I've been around the civil society for a while, and we've done so many things. And when I was called to discuss something around collaboration with civil society, private sector, to produce relevant gender and equity statistics. I found it a privilege, and I will give a snapshot of what gender and equity statistics is, where we are coming from with this, and some of it has been discussed by the previous discussants. The representative of UN Women mentioned something. The commissioner talked much about gender and equity, and this is something that has increasingly been recognized as essential to the process of sustainable development and the formulation of effective national development policies and programs. When we have gender and equity statistics, it's not just for our consumption, but it has been increasingly realized that it informs the development of policies and programs that are implemented in the country and beyond. I've also mentioned where the relevance of this definition to the Beijing Platform for Action that the Commissioner also referred to. That was at the conference in 1995, and specifically talking about the national, regional, and international statistics that ensures statistics related to individuals are corrected and compiled and analyzed for the development of policies and programs. And that informs what countries, how countries develop policies that will run the different aspects of life in a particular country. Next slide. Fostering of gender and equity perspectives in national and district statistics call for comprehensive coverage of gender issues in data production activities. And this means there is a lot that needs to be done around the issues that are covered in the production of gender. This speaks a lot to the tools, how they are developed, and to capture the gender issues in the data that will be compiled and analyzed. But also incorporating gender perspective into the design of surveys and audits by taking into account gender issues and avoiding gender biases in measurements. In this case, while we are fostering gender and equity perspectives in the national and district statistics, it's important to incorporate the gender perspectives in the designs of the surveys and the audits. Many times, the projects and programs that are implemented by civil society organizations call for, say, a rapid assessment or a gender audit to be conducted. But this need to take into account the gender perspectives, mainstreaming gender in the surveys at the design of the surveys and the audits that are taken. But also improving data analysis and data presentation, and to deliver statistics in formats that is easy to use by policymakers and planners. Many times, statistics, when presented in a complicated format, becomes difficult for the users, the end users, to make use of it or to apply. So it is important that at civil society, or this is what happens in the civil society, that the data analysis is improved and presented in a format that is simple and easy for the planners, who are the end users, and the decision makers to quickly capture and utilize. It's what do we need, or what do we do in capturing gender and equity statistics? These statistics need to reflect gender issues in terms of the questions, in terms of the problems and concerns related to aspects of women and men's lives, including specific opportunities and contributions to society. It's important that we also understand the uniqueness of the persons, of male and female, in the contribution to society, in the needs and the specific opportunities that are available, and this should be captured in the the statistics that are presented or that we use. Producing gender statistics also entails disintegrating data by sex and other characteristics to reveal those differences or inequalities and collecting data on specific issues that affect one sex more than the other or relate gender relations between women and men. It's an area that also needs to be focused on from time to time as we collect the gender and equity statistics, that these should be disintegrated by sex first as a primary concern, because this helps us to compare how the issues that we are looking out for affect men and women, affect their opportunities and the relations between the sexes. Then also, it's important there is adequate reflection on differences and inequalities in the situations of women and men. And in this case, we are looking at the concepts and definitions used in data collections being developed in such a way that ensures that the diversity of the varied groups of women and men and their specific activities and challenges are captured. It's not about the numbers, how many women and men are affected by a study or the issue that we are looking out for. But it is also important to look at the diversity in the various groups, how the issues affect their being as women and men, and what the implications are in their lives and how they contribute to development. It's also important to avoid data collection methods that induce gender bias in data collection. Many times, statistics that have a biased opinion will also give a biased finding. So it is important that that is avoided. But more than data disaggregated by sex, it's important that statistics incorporate perspectives that are not necessarily disaggregated by sex. For instance, national account statistics that incorporate a gender and equity perspective takes into account both women and men's contribution to all social and economic areas. And this also will reflect even on what my colleague presented on the unpaid care work. So when we collect gender and equity statistics, it's important that it captures perspectives that take into account both women's and men's contributions in social and economic areas. Gender equity statistics cannot be equated with women's statistics. It's not about women, and this has been the talk, and I think it was also mentioned earlier by the commissioner, how there are many voices now coming out about the biases and the inequity that is coming because of the women empowerment and versus the gender empowerment. So the gender equality. But here we are saying that it's not about women's statistics. So it's important to focus on women and men, both in terms of statistics and policies. When we get statistics that only compare the relationships between women and men and informing the policies that are developed, sometimes the implementation becomes a problem. Does it make sense? Hello? Does it make sense? Is there a policy or a law that you can relate with that has lagged for a while? Maybe we can relate it to the issues about the sex disaggregated data that we have collected over time. So sometimes when we have women statistics, it affects the policy implementation. So statistically, the situation of women can be adequately described and analyzed only by comparing it to that of men. While in terms of policies, the change of focus from women to gender calls for recognition that isolating women's concerns from mainstream development and strategies limits the impact of such policies and strategies, whereas more attention to the roles and responsibilities of both men and women and the interrelationships can make policies and strategies more effective. So it is important that much as we are looking at the statistics that may help us to come up with policies or to get data that will help us compare the inequalities that exist between the sexes, it is important that we also look at the roles and responsibilities of the women and men in regards to the contribution and in society and development. So ideally, the statistics, gender and equity statistics are defined by the following statistics. That data are collected and presented by sex as primary and overall classification. The data that is collected and analyzed through disaggregated sex is primary because it gives us the foundation, it gives us the starting point of comparing how the women and men are affected by a certain issue. But data should also reflect gender issues. The data we collect, the statistical data that we collect should reflect gender issues. But also, data are based on concepts and definitions that adequately reflect diversity of women and men and capture all aspects of their lives. This may take us to the diversity in terms of geographical location, in terms of the socialization, in terms of economic. So capturing all this will give a perspective that will enable us to have the statistics that look beyond the women and men, but also how they are affected maybe geographically, socially, and economically. Data collection methods also take into account stereotypes and sociocultural factors that may induce gender bias in the data. So as I said earlier, the gender and equity statistics should avoid data that will bias the findings. So it is important that the measurement is unbiased. Briefly, that is all I had with regards to gender and equity statistics and how the civil society has produced the relevant data. But maybe allow me to say something that is of the presentation about the challenges and recommendation that there has been challenges in producing the relevant gender and equity statistics because of lack of or inadequate capacity in human resource to collect reliable data. You'll also realize that many times the data or the statistics, the gender and equity statistics that are collected are demand-driven or donor-driven. Yeah, they may be donor-driven because a donor may come and will want you to report on a certain area, and that will be quickly included, but not mainstreamed in the project or the program. There's also mainstreaming gender and equity perspectives in sectors and programs and projects still lack in some areas. So this calls for gender audits to be done continuously and mainstreaming gender and equity perspectives in the programs and projects that are implemented. Some CSOs or private sector and MDAs lack the gender and equity perspective in the work. For instance, the national gender policy requires that the different institutions have a gender desk, a gender focal point person, but this may be just an added role to an officer in an organization, such that reporting on such becomes a challenge. I want to thank you so much for listening and looking forward to engaging further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Salome, for that presentation, which has elaborately talked about statistics, gender and equity, the disaggregations that CSOs are using. For questions and answers, kindly wait for the plenary, and we should be able to discuss how we can best integrate. At this moment, I call the next presenter, and that is Mr. Martin Mbangizi from UN Pulse. And he will be providing the data innovations that we can use to pave way for gender statistics. You're welcome, Martin.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. I would like to start by thanking the organizers for inviting me to this event and to give me, an opportunity to share part of the things that we are doing at the UN Global Pulse, Kampala. Yeah, so my name is Martin Gordon Mubangizi. I'm a data scientist, but also the head of office of UN Global Pulse Kampala. UN Global Pulse is an innovation lab that does data experimentation to advance and support the UN Charter. We are situated in the Executive Office of the Secretary General, and in Uganda, we are set up as an interagency initiative under the leadership of the UN Resident Coordinator. And we have physical presence in Jakarta, that is Indonesia. We have physical presence in Finland and in New York. And our vision is a world where responsible, inclusive, and digital innovations advance sustainable development and protects the planet. And so today I'll try to, I've thought of 4 ideas still around the work that we have done. We have done at UN Global Pulse to try to speak to how we can advance data innovations, integration for better evidence on gender equality and equity in Uganda. So one thing, one of the first ideas is to embrace digital transformation. And we know that in our National Development Plan, we have a full program on digital transformation. And basically this is deploying digital systems, you know, to support in operations, you know, to handle the business models, but also to help in customer experience. And we can draw lessons from the private sector because, you know, the private sector basically thrives on that. It has a lot of data about its customers, and it's able to serve them well. Every transaction you do with a private sector company like a telecom, it captures data about it, and it's able to use it to actually serve you better. So we should embrace digital transformation. The other thing is to search for new data sources. And the other idea is to use private sector data. And the other one is to use, you know, to forge collaboration for data sharing and reuse. So I think these 4 will actually help us, will enable us to produce more data and better gender data, and therefore we shall be able to derive, to analyze and derive actionable insights, but also use it to derive smarter and gender equitable decisions. So maybe I'll keep on signaling such that we are at the same level with the presentation. So I just want to use an example of a pilot that we did with the Ministry of Health in 2018, which was to track ambulances in the 2 sub-regions of West Nile and Rwenzori, and that is a screenshot of the dashboard. And if the ambulance, those dots are ambulances, and when it's green, it means it's online. If it's red, it means it's offline. And when it's yellow, it means there is some issue with ambulance. So this was live tracking of ambulances. So we did this as a pilot, and we are happy that we contributed to the time when Uganda was developing a national emergency medical service strategy plan, because Uganda then did not have any strategy on ambulances, and this work contributed to that. But also in the strategy plan, they mentioned that they would adopt and expand this system to other regions. Next slide. So now, if we look at the status of ambulances in Uganda, I mean, there is that category. There is that category of type A, which they want to phase out, and this is they call it the patient transport vehicle. I know most of us know what the meaning here. But then there's type B, which is an emergency care and basic life support ambulance. And then we have ambulance intensive unit and advanced life support ambulance. So currently we have 178 of type B, and we have 5 ambulances of type C, but the required numbers and what the government of Uganda is aiming at is having 460 and 30 for type C. This is from a news, a Monitor article dated May 8th, 18th, 2022. So it is recent. Now imagine after these ambulances are brought on board, every ambulance operation is actually put in a digital system, is captured in a digital system. So we are talking about at the time when they call for an ambulance, to the time when the ambulance actually, transfers the patient to the hospitals. Then it also documents the care that the patient gets and also the follow-up, okay? Because those are the major things. Now, in that same article, there was something like ambulances will not only provide maternal reproductive health services, but emergency medical services. So, I want to highlight the part of maternal and reproductive health. We know that there are lots of complications that women get when they are giving birth, and sometimes, unfortunately, there is loss of life, to the babies, but also to the mothers. And target 3.1 is looking at reducing maternal mortality. But on the next slide, let's see what is captured during the referral. So during the referral, they capture age, they capture sex, they capture the condition, the date, the initiating facility, the facility to which the patient is being referred to, and the reason for the referral. So you can see that the data that is being captured here is disaggregated. You can have the age bracket. You can understand the age bracket, you can understand the conditions, but also, interestingly, you have the initiating facility, but also the referred to facility, so you can also tell the geographical location. So you can, from the analysis of this data, you could basically also tell which conditions require ambulances in which geographical location, So data is actually, when you capture all this data, it's disaggregated, but if you have it currently in a system, you can do real-time. You can do real-time analysis and also be able to understand whether the ambulances are being effective and whether they are supporting people of all categories. The next slide. So in this work, we looked at just one ambulance. So this is a video. Hope it plays. But you'll see an ambulance coming all the way from West Nile, coming to Kampala, and then going back to West Nile on the same day. Hope it's able to play. But in this, there is a lot of information in this video. It shows an ambulance that normally works within the West. It shows an ambulance that normally works in West Nile, bringing a patient all the way to Kampala. When it goes out of the area of operation, there is an alert that is sent to the managers. And when it overspeeds, there is also an alert that is sent. But we noticed that this ambulance actually came all the way from West Nile and went back on the same day. So the driver took more than 16 hours, driving, which is also, dangerous, So there are lots of things statistics that you can generate from this to even help support the management of the ambulances, but also efficiencies. I mean, the story is too long because in this project we interacted with the district officials, we interacted with the hospital administrators, we interacted with the drivers, with several stakeholders, and there were lots of issues that were coming through that this kind of system would actually solve because you have data. Even at the end of the day, you can know where all the ambulances have been. So imagine if you have 460 plus 30, which is around, 490, and you have this data. It is so rich. So if we can embrace data, if we can embrace digital transformation, this will be very good for the country, and it will be easy to generate lots of data that is disaggregated that can actually inform statistics. Now, the other idea is search for new data source. So at UN Global Pulse, we came up with a tool. We came up with a tool that can mine public radio discussions, and this was very useful during the COVID-19 outbreak because we participated in a committee in the response of COVID-19, and were contributing misinformation, that was going around on radio about COVID-19. But we also know that during that time, there were a lot of reported cases of gender-based violence. And this found us when we were also trying to support the Spotlight initiative to try to track gender perceptions, on radio. So this is an artificial intelligence powered tool. It converts, the next slide. So it basically is able to convert, the next slide, it's able to convert voice to text, and the idea that it converts voice to text, but okay, before it converts voice to text, it's able to detect and filter out music. Then the speech that is left, it converts it to text. Then using keywords, we are able to mine to look for relevant discussions on a topic of interest. So for example, if we're interested in gender-based violence, we put in keywords around gender-based violence. And so we match the keywords with the text, and we're able to pick out relevant discussions where people are talking about gender-based violence. Now, when we do that, we basically reduce the volume to that green part there. So all that is data that is not relevant to is all that. Or if all this is the radio broadcast, then we are left with a very small section of the radio broadcast that we can then analyze for a particular topic. So this is an innovative tool, going out to search for new data source that can inform, statistics or even interventions to gender-based violence. And my colleague from Medad, I think Kakuru from, in his presentation, he talked about this, and we know that during the COVID period, men and spouses lived together for a long period of time during lockdowns than they had ever had a chance to do. And that created lots of issues, of housework, And later when we shall see, the next slide, please. Later we shall see, so later we shall see, so in those discussions, there were those discussions of whether women should support husbands, in homes, and some women were against it. They were saying, I can't allow my husband to help me in housework. So you find that sometimes women, also promote the negative perceptions. So from radio, we could actually get data about incidences that are happening, because they are reported, but we can also get information on perceptions. So in doing so, although we cannot, although this is not, I would say these are just, it's not perfect statistics, I would say, but this will give you an indication of the trend of what is happening, whether the incidences are increasing or decreasing, and it will also give you information about the perceptions that are promoting, gender-based violence. So we tried to measure, although this is was not representative, we tried to look at an indicator 3.1, a gender-based violence indicator 0.1, that looks at percentage of people who think it is justifiable for a man to subject his wife or intimate partner to violence, and this should be disaggregated by sex, if she is unfaithful to him, if she disobeys her husband or partner, if she argues with him, or if she refuses to have sex with him, or if she does not do housework adequately. Okay, so we tried to do some exercise, and we found that all these combined, like 68% of the people were against, 29 were for, and then some people were neutral. Some people tend to choose to be in the middle, they don't want to show sides. But we're summarizing all this from lots of discussions, that were mined from the radio. And in some instances, as you'll see, you'll find that some women basically support that, for example, men should be violated if they don't, say, do housework, because they feel like cooking should be something of for women, and if a man tries to do that, maybe the man is not appreciating the way she cooks or something else. Yeah, so this is an exercise that we did, and we do produce bi-monthly reports that we share, and if members here are interested in receiving these perceptions, they can give me their emails, and I can share these perceptions with them on a bi-monthly yeah. So let's go to the next. So the next is use of public sector data. So during COVID, we know that the measures that were put in place by governments, like lockdowns, like curfews, were very difficult to, for government, it was very difficult for government to know whether people were conforming to what was happening, to the restrictions, the non-pharmaceutical restrictions during COVID. And of course, that during COVID, they would create these models to understand how the cases are going to increase or decrease. But of course, these models they were creating were depending on the measures they were putting in place. So if they say there is restrictions on movement from one district to another, they know that would reduce. But if that movement keeps on happening, it means the model will not predict the correct results. So some countries, including Ghana, had access to mobile phone data, and they tried to use it to understand whether people were conforming to the restrictions. Of course, that helps in the response. And we know that COVID affected everyone. It affected, families. It affected access to basic health care. it affected access for maternal, those antenatal visits. So it really affected lots of sectors. But having access to such to this kind of data, it helps. So you can actually work out mobility, you can now work out social interactions, but you can also work out economic activity. So during the pandemic, although we were not able to access the data, because it is something that we're still working on to see that private sector at one point is able to share data with to share data for social good. But we did train national statistics offices throughout Africa on how this data could actually be used. And we had over 12 countries, and we are happy that Uganda Bureau of Statistics attended. But we also had some countries from Asia attending. They requested, it was meant for Africa, but they requested and we allowed them to attend. So this is, private sector has a lot of data that could be useful also in estimating SDGs. There are some SDGs around ICTs that actually can be generated easily from these data sources. But also understanding economic shocks. I mean, there's a lot of things. And there's some research that, for example, has been done where you can try to understand gender of a person, looking at their patterns of phone usage. So there are lots of things that are being done that can be helpful. Of course, there are issues of privacy, but what we are saying here is not that we normally the analysis of this data is done at the telecoms, and what is sent out from the telecoms are basically aggregates. So the issue of privacy is dealt with because all the analysis is done at the telecoms, and what is sent to say the Uganda Bureau of Statistics or to any other person, these are just aggregates or indicators. For example, for mobility, you have a mobility matrix. So there's no any privacy revealing information that is shared outside the telecom. So this is something that we need to work on, and we have been doing some, would say, exercises to promote the use of telecoms data. And the next slide has an example of that experiment that we did, and we're looking at movement of people within Uganda. And this would be, for example, useful during a pandemic. But as I said, telecoms data could also be used to estimate some of the ICT indicators. So it is important for us to start thinking about data sharing from private sector to government. But if it is taking long, we could, it's just, So what you can see, these are basically lights. Okay, I mean, these are like dots moving from one city to the other. And where it is, the lighter part there is basically Kampala. And you can see that there is a lot of movement between Kampala and Entebbe, but also on Jinja Road, there's a lot of movement. So this is something that we did just to show that telecoms are useful. And this could also be very useful during a disease outbreak. Next slide. So collaboration for data sharing and reuse. Next slide. So we know that in the National Development Plan 3, we have a digital transformation program. And this program had an action of developing a national fourth industrial revolution strategy, strategies and frameworks. And I'm happy to say that the National Task Force on the 4IR was commissioned some years back by the president, by His Excellency, the President of Uganda, and it has finished. It has finished its report, and this report is due to be handed over to the Prime Minister anytime. But this report recognizes that data is a critical asset in the socio-economic transformation, and the policy, and it calls for a policy instrument to ensure responsible data sharing, collaboration to maximize the value generated from data. Okay, because I mean you can't collect every data, and the good thing is that private sector companies, for example, collect data as they're doing business. You know, so they're collecting data passively, not actively, and this data could be just accessed and reused for statistics, even to support gender statistics. Next slide. So UN Global Pulse and the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance are already working together. We recently had a 3-day workshop to talk about the future of data sharing and reuse in Uganda, and I'm happy I see some of the participants here. We had UBOS, URA, you know, lots of UN agencies attended, private sector companies, you know, there were many. And we looked at mapping of stakeholders, we identified drivers for change, we identified challenges, we identified enablers, and we also identified bold steps that need to be taken to ensure that there is a culture for data sharing and reuse in Uganda. And I hope these 4 ideas will actually help us get sufficient data to generate gender statistics. So this is all that I had for my presentation. Thanks for listening.
Let's clap for Martin for those innovations. These are actually tested innovations. He didn't want to put us into the future that has not been tested. So those are efforts for UN Pulse, and we've seen them tracking ambulances, we've seen them use private sector information, and we've also seen the mobile tracking devices. Thank you so much, Martin, for that information. Now that brings us to the end of the discussions. We were not able to have the representative from EOC to discuss the utilization, but since we are all here, we shall discuss as a group the data issues you're having with data produced by either the Bureau or the civil societies. So we shall take on the plenary now. I know you've had a lot. Just to take you through the timetable, we began with a keynote address from the UN representative. We had a keynote address. We had the opening welcoming remarks from UN representative. Then we also have the keynote address that was by Madame Magdalene Chomgisha from Ministry of Local Government. We had a wonderful presentation from Mr. Senono about the multi-dimensional energy, for index for the poor, the energy poor, okay? Then we also we had a presentation from EPRC, that was Mr. Kakuru, who took us through the unpaid care work. Many questions. Mr. Kakuru, prepare yourself. This is the hot cake. Then we've had a discussion from Madame Salome about how CSOs, how best we can collaborate with CSOs to integrate the data they produce with other data. to pave way for gender statistics. And finally, we've had a wonderful presentation from Mr. Martin Mubangizi about the data innovations. So the floor is yours. You will give your name, the institution, and then the question will be recorded. But just to be sure that we capture everything, you have books. In case you're not selected to speak, kindly write on the piece of paper, and we should be able to answer your questions if possible. Could somebody help me with the microphone? I have another microphone here. It's coming.
Thank you, our moderator. My name is Jim Rex Byamjisha from School of Statistics and Planning, Makerere. I wanted to first present my few questions to my brother Vincent Senono on the energy poor, which I think was well done. Thank you so much. My first question is, okay, there are a number of things which you said you are not going to say because of time, but I'm wondering whether you incorporated the rural urban segregation of the data in terms of the access to the modern energy, because that would be very, very, very important, because we know the people who are economically empowered, politically empowered, there is a lot to do with the rural-urban kind of settlement. The second one was the wonderful comment that you made about the empowerment of both men and women as something that will bring sustainable kind of impacts that we need to have with regard to the access to the modern energy. And I think this is very important, because if we want to see the actual impact that we have created on the women empowerment, we should not in any way discourage the empowerment of women, of men. We should be able to have men empowered, and then we do the enough efforts to have the women empowered, because currently we have so many young men who have dropped out of school and are engaged in drugs and alcohol abuse at the expense of the focus on only the girl child. So meaning that the empowerment of both men and women simultaneously will be able to show to what extent we have been able to achieve on the agenda of the women empowerment. Now, the second question, the other one was just an observation. The second question that I have is, in the analysis that you presented, you didn't clearly show us how you analyze the affordability to the clean energy or the good energy, that is electricity. You can easily have access, because a lot of emphasis was put on access, but little was mentioned about the affordability. Did you analyze how affordable it is and the proportions of the households that could actually afford it? A good example is ourselves. We have electricity in our homes, but we use charcoal to do the cooking. And lastly, we have put a lot of emphasis about the modern energy, but generally speaking, there is a general problem with access to the energy for cooking, because a number of trees have been cut. In a number of areas, people are no longer having biomass for cooking. They are instead using the dry wood to do the cooking. and so on and so forth. So if we are going to look at this, do we have a deeper analysis about the general access to the energy, especially energy for cooking? Thank you.
Thank you. Those were all directed to Mr. Senono, and he'll answer. I will be taking a session of 3. That's 1. Yes?
Okay, thank you very much, the organizers and all the presenters. My name is Tony Udong. I'm from UN Resident Coordinator's Office, working on Spotlight Program as monitoring and evaluation specialist. My first question goes to Vincent. When you talk of women empowerment, you did mention about 3 dimensions, that is social, economic, and then political. So I wanted to know, in your analysis, did you consider it as a composite, or if one was true? For instance, if it is social, then you consider as social, or unless maybe someone met all the 3 conditions, then it makes the situation to be empowered. Then for Kakuro, for the unpaid care work, thanks a lot for that. In fact, it was so enlightening, but I also wanted to know, in estimating the time spent, what age was considered? Was it for also the young in the household, or it's only for the for certain age of male and female in the household? Then for Salom and the CSO, I think my observation is that there's a lot of data being generated at CSO level, but I think our major issue is how it fits into the national database. I did take part in some exercise called the mean of verification, where we visited a number of CSOs under Spotlight Initiative, over 40 of them, but we realized sometime the data they generate, for instance, on GBV, are not reported. So there's a lot being missed, which impact on our ability to advocate, to plan, and to make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists and presenters. My name is Lilian Ayevare. I head the Monitoring, Evaluation, Research and Learning at International Justice Mission, and we are working to strengthen the justice system using the case of violence against women and children. My question is to the last presenter, UN Global Pulse. Using one of 2 of your components, digital transformation, then collaboration for data sharing and reuse, I would just like to know what innovations could be there, or sharing something on innovations for justice system data strengthening, then what could be shared and what could be reused for us to curb the gender-based violence and handling of cases of gender-based violence for equity. Thank you.
So we have a set of 3. Let's first handle those ones. Can I have Vincent take the lead?
Thank you. And the first question was I think the first section was from my lecture, and yes, the data is really disaggregated in terms of rural urban, in terms of gender, in terms of occupation of the household, in terms of region, in terms of sub-region. So the panel data allow you to do a lot of disaggregation, and it is from 2009 to 2022. So it is a span of data, so which allows you to do a lot of analysis. in terms of the second one, in terms of the components of the index, in the diagram I indicated that the index has 3 dimensions, and one was electricity access, cooking solutions, and electricity services and equipment. And each of these dimension had indicators. I'll just mention one on electricity access. It had capacity, it has quality, it had reliability, it had affordability, and it had affordability and in terms of quality which someone accesses. So there was a number of quality. And when I was developing these indices, it also, when you look at cooking solution, I wish she can be able to show it, the diagram alone. Unfortunately, there's no time. But also electricity has a cooking solution. It's not only about looking at the cooking fuel, but has also the component where you are cooking from. If you have a kitchen, is it ventilated? Because we know that when we talk about cooking exposure, you are talking about the ability of the household to be exposed to fumes as a result of using dirty fuels. In the third one, which I mentioned, the access was mainly to do with equipment. Do the household can afford the equipments, and which uses these? You have reliable electricity, you have improved cooking stove, you can afford the cooking stove, but do you really have it? Those are the 3 components. On the second question, you can access the same paper. It is on website. When you look at the energy poverty in Uganda, it has already been published in the journal. You just Google energy poverty in Uganda. You can easily access it. Then on the second component of women empowerment, where you can, it is the composite indicators, and we have components of economic empowerment. This includes having an income as a woman, having an assets where you can jointly or individually make a decision about, among others. Then political also have whether a woman belongs to a local community, is a member, it continually participates in the decision making of the community. Then you also have the social component, where a woman is allowed to move alone, it can do different decisions without being interrupted by the spouse. So among other indicators. So there is also a set of indicators which were used. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Senunu. I think the issue with socio-political, and it was about, was it a composite or it was individually done? Was it social only? Did you consider the 3 at once, or it was only social, then political, then economic? That was the question.
Okay, I think I said was a composite, because what I mean that in analysis, you start with the composite, and then you also generate indices for each component. And in that paper, I analyzed that political and economic empowerment was very strong compared to social empowerment. And I was wondering what is because social was not really significant, but political and economic was making household move out of poverty. So I did the composite, as I have indicated, empowerment, but also in the paper, there is a disaggregated breakdown of different components of this index.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Senunu. Let me have Mr. Kakuru respond to the issue of what was the age limit for the time use.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tony Obong, for your question. Looks like you are interested in the type of respondent. If I got it well, yeah, in a household, 4 people. In our study, we considered 1, the man, actually the woman, the main respondent, the woman, married woman. Then the man or the spouse or the husband, then a girl and a boy between the age of 8 and 17. 4 in a household, 4 respondents.
So that answers the question of age. Could I have Mr. Martin Mubangizi respond to the issue of how we can innovatively use data from justice?
Thanks a lot for the question, Madam Lillian Ayebale. So you asked about how digital transformation and how the issue of data sharing can actually support in justice. So digital transformation normally has 3 parts. There is the issue of digitizing. If data is on hard copies and you want it digital, the issue of digitalizing is having a system such that you capture data as transactions happen. And later on, when you have amassed a lot of data, then you do innovation. So, and to do innovation, you would then, use analytics, use, machine learning to do prediction, to do classification. You can do lots of things with the data to generate insights that can help you make decisions and help you in planning, and other things. So that's how I think digital transformation would help. So if in the justice system, everything is actually in a database somewhere and it's captured as it comes, then it would actually help in generating statistics, but also generating lots of insights from the data. It could help in following up with the cases and the rest of the things. Then the issue of data sharing, as Tony Odong has mentioned, given an example that some of the implementing partners had a lot of data, but this data was basically in silos. Everyone had his own data, and data was not speaking to each other. So in that kind of case, you don't have a comprehensive picture of what is happening, for example, in the justice system around gender-based violence, and therefore responding, also supporting survivors also becomes very difficult. And sometimes you don't know who is supporting which area. There's duplication of efforts. So there are lots of things that data sharing can actually help in solving. So yeah, so that those are that's how I can respond to your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin, for those insights on how we can improve the justice system. We need to first digitalize the system, all the cases, however long. So if we can digitalize that, we can also encourage sharing from the administrative units, from the LCs, from the police and what. Then if all those can share with us, then we can integrate and go into whatever he's talking about, machine learning and everything. Thank you, Martin. Can we take another round of questions? Yes?
Thank you. I'm David Bizimana. I'm from UNHCR, Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist. My first question goes back to Dr. Simon. I have 2 questions for you. The first one, in your presentation, you said the index, there's something which was still perplexing you about the men who are empowered and women who are empowered vis-a-vis the other household, which is only men empowered. And I would love to know what's your next step about that unresolved question. What do you think could have been caused that? Then the same question, in your study, now that you are here and the papers there, you can tell me, or tell us, sampling methodology, you said it's regional. I don't know the districts you considered in this study. And I want also to know whether refugees were among the sample, because there is a concern about the environmental impact as a result of the refugee population, which is around 1.5 million people, and that's equivalent to around 5 districts in Uganda. So explain to us whether the sampling methodology and also whether you included the refugee population. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty, and thank you, our panelists, in your respective capacities. For me, I'm just considering a layperson who is in this workshop, not a statistician, but is in attendance to listen to what is happening in terms of gender equality, data and statistics. We are talking about all these concepts, all these jargons that are so technical. Are we able to demystify these concepts so that when we are in such platforms, everyone is on board and they're able to understand and work with us? So I think we have a gap there, and maybe we need to consider this subsequently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panelists and everybody who is here. My name is Howard Ayo. I'm a researcher, PhD. I had a discussion with Senono on the side, and I asked him how his findings relates to structural issues around governance for energy in Uganda. His analysis dwells more at a micro level, but the question is, the conditions which you examined, is there a manifestation regarding structural gaps which are perpetuating conditions of energy poverty at a micro level? And if so, you talked about policy measures. Is there any specific measures that you are directing this research to contribute towards addressing the gaps therein? Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hope Jemima Kasimbazi. I'm sorry I'm unable to stand because of old age, but I hope you can hear me. I work at the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, the apex body for the private sector, as the assistant manager in charge of gender equality, women in business, outreach and partnership coordinator. I just wanted to share our approach, which is private sector is taking in regard to what we are discussing. We have a program called Gender Equality Satisfaction Program, which is supported by UNDP, and we promote the gender equality. We move to the private sector companies so that they are able, for example, to look at the pay gaps, work-life balance, involving women in the leadership positions, and avoiding being in those traditional jobs for men and women, gender-based violence, sexual harassment, sexist language. So I'm just sharing that as private sector, we have already started on it, and we'll need your support, please. And we'll be having an occasion to recognize some companies that have signed on the gender equality seal, and some have actually excelled in their business, because we're looking at profitability and productivity of workforce. Thank you. Clap for me, please.
Now that was an energizer for everybody. Thank you, Madam Hope. And this question goes to you. How can we integrate the data that you've collected with our data? That is a question for you. So if you can help us, because you have the data and we don't have it, but we can use it to enrich the quantitative that we have. So how best can we integrate? So as you think of the answer, other members of the civil societies can also support her when the time comes. At the moment, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome the Deputy Executive Director, Mr. Nabongo. You're welcome. We've been waiting for you since morning, but because of the busy schedule, you've just arrived. You're welcome, sir. Could I have Mr. Senono to respond to the question first? This sends Mr. Senono more work, okay? He's doing it at micro level. Is he considering the governance structures? Now that's taking him back to the drawing board. Kindly elaborate. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, David, one of the issue which we are thinking as the Bureau, I know we are getting some support from UN Women. We want to make this one a national index that want to promote to make sure that this index meets because we don't have, as I know that some work has been done by EPRC, but when you say it is a national index, you must involve all stakeholders and agree with all dimensions and questions. So one of the things we want to do is to take it beyond academics, and we develop it to the level of becoming a national measure like poverty. That is one. Two, yes, I previously I thought that it is about empowering women. And when the data came out and it shows that in a household where you have both men and women, it is important to power both of them. And I think one of the presenters in the morning also mentioned that if we talk about girls, and also it is important to talk about what? Boys. And I was reading last on the literature on HIV transmission, that one time when the effort was put on men, on women and adolescents, there was a reduction in HIV, but men relatively HIV went up. And you cannot control, I'm using that analogy, you can talk about controlling HIV without talking between man and what? And the woman. That somehow convinced me that the findings is consistent with the literature. That is two. The second one was I'm using a rich data set by the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. I'm not collecting the data. So it is a national statistics spanning from 2009 to 2022. So it is a panel data analysis. So lastly, previous study in the Bureau, we are not capturing the information about people in the settlements. Of recent, it is only when WOBOS has started collecting data in the settlements as part of official what? Statistics. So it only happened that if a household was not living in a settlement and they happened to be part of the sample, it was covered. But it was not intentionally went for people in the settlement. I think that is the issue which was I think the rest was comment and my friend Ayo. Yes, it depends on the level you want to analyze. Me, I was looking at household level data. What is the behavior at household level? But we know that without intervention of the government, you cannot complete the picture. So other studies can look at what is the impact of government policy regarding energy poverty, given that we have known that households suffer not only access, but they suffer from quality, they suffer from reliability, they suffer from affordability, so and many others. So we need to combine at macro level, how do you bring in the government intervention? I think this is what I'd intended to research on at macro level, but I think this study can be extended at macro level and capture the governance issues. But as I conclude, Chair, I have one comment. I happen to be part of the people who are doing the ruralification program in the bureau who did the study. And many people have polls, but they cannot use it because they cannot afford it. And one of the pictures I took, which was very interesting, was that in one area which I don't want to mention, you could see so many wires in the evening and the lighting. But when you went back the next day in the morning, there was no wire. There was nothing. So you wonder, and they call it wire. In one of the Elgon region, they call it, no, it is, this is different, I'm going to say. What I'm going to say, in Elgon region, they have a name which they are using it, snake bite. When you hear that someone has died of a snake bite, it means someone was legally connecting and that person died.
Okay, as we get used to that slang of a snake bite, Mr. Senono?
I did correspond for his question. That
yes, he still had a question on what's the composition of the sub-regions. David, we have a total of 16 sub-regions.
15.
15, including Kampala, is
Yeah.
that so? So now, within each sub-region, Mr. Senono, you can elaborate. I don't want to take the show, kindly.
I
You
think
okay
I
with
have
that one?
answered that it follows a national structure sampling.
Okay.
And it doesn't, it depends, like for the panel survey, you may not get good estimates at sub-regional level, but you get good estimates at regional level. That is central, eastern, northern, and western.
Okay. Now, before we leave your desk, Mr. Senono, there was a question on what was the sampling methodology. Could you kindly explain what panel is? This is a slang to the statisticians, and you've been frequently using it. And kindly, briefly elaborate. We don't want the whole sampling methodology, but tap into how we get to the panel households. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chair. Unfortunately, I'm sorry for what the slangs I'm using. When we say panel, the WOBOS have so many surveys. One of them is to follow the same households and individual over time. So when you follow the same individual over time, this is what we refer to as a panel household. But we also have other surveys done, what we call precessional surveys. We visit the household once and we don't go back. The reason why we always recommend people to use WOBOS statistics, and one, for those who are here who are academicians, it became very easy to publish in the ESTA journal, because one of the issues which people raise is what is the source of the data and quality. So it is important, that's why we agreed that we promote the use of official statistics, not only as WOBOS, but also to other people to be able to use it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Senono. Just one more for Howard. He was asking whether your survey or your activity is trying to address something. What is that you're trying to address? Is that so, Howard? Yes. So, like, you would say, I'm responding to SDG this, and kindly elaborate. What
Okay.
are you trying to address by doing this index?
Chair, there are two things which we are trying to address. One, that women have suffered more due to energy poverty. Is it true that when you empower women, you are reducing the effect of energy poverty in the country? And the findings is yes. That's one question. The second question was, in Uganda, we have been not having any measure of energy poverty. The only measure which has been there in the document is, do you have access to the electricity? So our study was intended to tell government that you don't need only to look at access to electricity, but also you need to look at other issues like quality. Like yesterday, I was trying to do some work. The whole night there was no electricity. So I really felt, so these are the things which are being ignored, that blackouts is a common phenomenon in the country. People have, they have the wires, they don't have electricity. And two, also you look at the reliability and the quality. People have lost life. People have lost assets because of and it comes within a minute, and within an hour it has gone. It comes back. So that is the purpose of the study.
Okay, Mr. Senuno, that discussion can take on and on and on, but do you realize that we have new energy sources? The solar is coming on, just by the way, but not for this discussion. Can we have just one more before we can go to my major discussion? Yeah, I know it's lunchtime, but I wanted us to discuss the data issues. We need your feedback as data users. I'll give the opportunity to the representative from the Orthodox Church. Thank you. Mr. Kawase?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Father Cornelius from the Uganda Orthodox Church, Education Secretary, and I also participate very actively in the Uganda Joint Christian Council and Interreligious Council of Uganda Education Matters. Here we are talking about the utilization and integration of data. We are interested and concerned about how schools and everyone that goes into the school system is taken care of in these arguments. And of course, how faith communities come in. Have you considered, for example, having some of the faith communities as sources of data? As a priest, I will tell you that I will not volunteer data, but there is data related to many issues, indices, for instance, of corruption, indices of fidelity, indices of adultery, indices of virtues, indices of values, that we need to take interest in order to inform our society. When we talk about what are these? The workers, non-paid work. What are the religious values connected to this? Are we able to connect Ellison's argument to the religious values, the ethical values, and the virtues that our different religious convictions put forward? It may not necessarily be that this person who is in the home or out of the home is seeking to be paid. I would like us to carefully refer to what I normally call the Martha syndrome. In Luke chapter 10, verse 41 to 42. The Martha syndrome. Martha chooses, when she gets a visitor, she goes to the kitchen and goes around looking for things to eat. And Mary, her sister, chooses to go and sit by the side of the visitor. Now that is the Mary, I call it the Mary model. Do we have the Mary model and the Martha syndrome properly and statistically analyzed in our society, so that we can know when to apply the data. And finally, this is where I would like us to apply the data. It is evident from some statistics here I've been looking at that when we are looking at the sexuality education framework, which has been a very big thorn between government and the religious organizations. Some people think the religious organizations are refusing to accept the sexuality education framework, but there isn't sufficient data to support most of the claims, although some data have been used. Is it possible to test the Martha syndrome and the Mary model on how to nurture our children, on how to educate, on how to bridge that gap between the data sets and the use, the data use? Because data sets can be data sets. Those ambulances that were coming from West Nile in one day, they are being driven by human beings, somebody's husband. But do we look at those values and virtues? Why is he doing it like that? Is it because of money? Is it because of the life in the car? Or is it because they have been ordered? Who is at play? Thank you very much.
I think that calls for a louder clap. Thank you for those insights into how best we can integrate information from the statistical side and the religious side. I think we are drawing much from him, and most of the working class must be Mary models. I'm just assuming. Okay, that aside, that I'm not taking any more questions because of time, but I want us to kindly give us at least 5 points of how we can integrate other person's data into statistical data. Just 5 of them, please.
Thank you so much. My first area of interest is the way we define our GDP. It normally considers work which is done for self-help not to be part of the GDP unless if that has changed. And that is where a lot of care work is done. And EPRC has computed it to about $10 million. So meaning if the definition and the entire process of the computation of GDP can be looked into, I think it will be something of great use. The second area of interest is about the different forms of the gender-based violence. A lot of focus has been on the physical violence against women, but we have not developed clearly the indicator for the mental distress that men normally suffer at the hands of women, whereas the men use the physical hands, the women use the verbal attack, and this distresses. So can we therefore now begin to think about the mental distress and it becomes part of the gender-based violence? Thank you.
That's his view, the verbal from women to men, but these days men can also sing and we get the music louder. So could we have another? Thank you so much for the GDP contribution, how we can best use EPRC data to compute, to have the self-care, the way they valued it at the 10 billion. Thank you for that. Any other way we can integrate? CSOs, please, could you have a way how best we can integrate? If that's a harder question, yes. Could we have the data issues? What are the data issues? What are the current gender data issues?
I think some presenter here mentioned it. I think there's a lot of data with the NGOs and CSOs. I think the UBOS policy should be really increased or strengthened to monitor, find out what is with NGOs and CSOs, harnessing it and integrating it either centrally or regionally. I think that's the role of UBOS. There's a lot of data which is lying somewhere.
That is loud and clear to our UBOS management, and I pray that our DED will be talking about the citizen-generated tool.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Sylvia Rakita from Makerere University Business School. There are two issues. One is to the director, demographic and social statistics. Before I talk about the solution, for us as students, researchers and academia, one of the biggest challenges we've had is ease of use of the data from the Bureau. And I'm just wondering if, as a department or directorate, are there any plans to try to bridge this gap by maybe, for example, training researchers and academicians on how to maneuver into the data? Because there's a lot, but we struggle and we end up going to collect our own, which is much easier to use. Yet actually, as Vincent raised, when we go into publication, the journals require you to use national data, but then we cannot use it. So probably something to do about it there. Even accessibility is difficult. When you write your letter, they toss you see so and so, see so and so. By the time you're done, you're really so fed up about the data. And then when you get it, even using it is quite very difficult. There's a lot of coding and, it's really very, I don't know what to say in there. Then also the issue of the scope of the data. Now, when we talk about gender, madam, I don't know, I think we need to go deeper because gender is also socially constructed. So should we be looking at gender as male, female, woman, man? There is a new dimension, an emerging dimension of transgenerational gender. Where do we put such people? And when you again send your paper, those issues emerge. Is gender an issue of man, woman? So I think we need to look beyond that. And to what he has just raised is the issue of conflicting statistics. Currently, if you ask what is the access rate, the electricity access rate in Uganda, someone tells you it's 24, another source is telling you it is 26, another one is telling you it's 51. So at the end of the day, which one should we follow as academicians? So I think UBOS needs to come out very strongly in there and control who is putting out what. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was to us as an institution. People are finding it hard to utilize and uptake our statistics. Do we do a lot of coding? Director, that was to you, and you will answer at an appropriate time. I think kindly, we are doing bad. We need to have the way forward and the closure and a brief greeting from the board member, and we shall call it a day. So let's have, in that order, a greeting from the board member. Then we shall have Madame Helen respond to a few questions and give a brief way forward. And finally, we shall have our Deputy Executive Director to close.
Thank you. Ordinarily, I would have spoken last because the technical people understand it better. But regardless, I'm also a technical board member. Thank you so much, the Deputy Executive Director, the academicians who are here from the academia, the civil society, NGOs, and all stakeholders here. The last person who spoke from MOOBS Business School. I want to begin with that before I say anything as a board member. I think this puts us to task as an institution, and it's good you've spoken in my presence. My role as a governing individual at the Bureau, our interest is to groom people to be able to take over from people who are getting out of the Bureau. And if we have such a recommendation from a student, I think we need to do our work better so that we are able to avail data to people who want to use it. The issue of tossing people tedious to get the data is a very big challenge that will need to be addressed. The deputy executive director is here, he's taking note. And we shall have to resolve that one. I want to say a lot has been spoken here. It all boils to a few things. The Bureau is mandated in the country to conduct surveys and censuses, and it's the only one that's supposed to release credible data that is supposed to be used in the country. But that said, along the way, there are various frameworks that are being developed to ensure synchronization on how we can, at the Bureau, be able to assess the data that is being collected to authenticate it to be used by the public. Just like she said, a lot of conflicting data that exist. I want to assure you, Madam, I don't remember your name you raised, but it is advisable to use the Bureau of Statistics data in whatever you do, because it is the most accepted data globally. I want also to say from the various speakers here that we need to improve on our data analysis presented in the format of the layman's person for people to be able to understand. As a governing body, when we come to sit here, we pick issues raised by people, by stakeholders. I want to encourage you people, the stakeholders, that the Bureau goes through a process whenever it goes for surveys. And I want to believe that you are usually consulted. Like we are preparing to go for the National Population and Housing Census. I want to assume that the tools that are going to be used must be with you people to input what you want to collect for your particular organizations, and kindly take these ones as serious consultations. It will be saddening that after we finalize the tool, people come to say, like somebody said here, that donors in Midway come to raise issues and they want to be incorporated. Those issues may be late. So this is the time, and I want to encourage you that whenever you are called on as stakeholders, to give in your input. I want to assure you that as a board of the Bureau, we are up to a task to ensure that we achieve all these you are reading here. We achieve the vision, we coordinate the national statistics systems to provide quality statistics. And we do that through oversighting the management. My task here today was to come and listen in to see the concerns that you are raising, and I've picked a number of them. I've been sharing with Helen things that they need to do better to improve our image, but also to ensure that our data we release is taken as serious as it deserves. With this, I want to thank you for the opportunity to have a word to you. My name is Bernard Mulengani. I am a member on the board. Our chairperson is Dr. Albert Biamugisha. And as I speak, our secretary to the board lost the husband. Very soon I'll be running away because there is prayers coming on at around 3. So thank you so much.
The floor is yours, Madam Helen.
Thank you very much, our colleague Betty. Ladies and gentlemen, let us clap for the facilitators, the presenters. Yes, my name is Helen. I've been introduced. I work with Uganda Bureau of Statistics. Our mandate is clear, and that's what brings us together as producers and users of statistics. And we are here to work together, but we take lead in coordinating the what? The National Statistics System. I am happy I've been given the task of what is now the way forward. In whatever we do, all the statistics that we do, we have a plan for national statistics development. It is aligned to our national development plan, the same year as it moves together. In that plan, we are all key players, but we are at the apex level where we monitor. So in this plan, everything that we have discussed here is documented. But these Bibles of ours have to be with us. At times we forget to do our work. Everything that has been highlighted there is included in the Plan for National Statistics Development. One of the strategic priorities is to prioritize and strengthen statistics for cross-cutting areas, and one of them is gender. The others, he has talked about data for refugees, data for migration. We are aware about the cross-cutting issues, the transgender, issues of human rights. But maybe before I move into that, I was told that I also have to answer some questions. I will begin with the question that was directly posed to me, and the others possibly I will leave for our the Office of the Executive Director, since he's around. The issue you asked about, the issues that are coming on board, the transgender. Members, in our assignments, in our work, in our mandate, we follow the national policy. And I don't know whether we have somebody from the Ministry of Gender. The faces have changed, I know they are here. But do we consider the transgender? Has government recognized some of these groups? Pardon? So what is in the policy for Ministry of Gender is what we collect. We don't go beyond the mandate of this country. So I hope I've answered that. But I'm really disturbed about the issue of collecting data. When you come to the Bureau, because we have all this formalized, we'll look into that matter. We are going to take it up. And I thank you very much for bringing it up, that it has been a challenge. Having access to the data, when the way we archive our data, we need to sit and do more work. The good thing, Idi's office is here. Madam Betty is here. She's part of the team, where we have to improve on our data that we share to the users. When you create a system file, when you ask the question, is the mother of Helen still alive? Is the father of Helen still alive? This gives us issues of orphanhood. So how do you compute orphanhood? I don't see it in the data. So we should be doing more to the data to make it more meaningful, more relevant, and also internal processes look at the data. We are going to look into these matters, and we are taking it up. The good thing that even the ED's office is here to take on this. But we ought to do a lot. There was also a submission on, I'm a lay person, the things have been discussed in this room. Do I understand them? It goes beyond, what are you doing to your statistics? Are you ending here? We talk about utilization. We talk about preparing policy briefs. But part of this forum, we are here to share the data results from the various areas. So the message I get, yes, the results are good to inform policy, and I'm glad Vincent has brought up some of the issues which are into the way forward. He has already mentioned it. We need to come together as a team and accept this as data which was done at micro level. We need to get into the macro level so that we inform policy and government at that level. So we need to do a lot in demystifying statistics. And how are we going to do this? We talk about popular versions. You even go ahead and you have to translate some of these into our local languages. So for this paper, you find that you can write a 5 or 6 page document, but bringing out key messages, using the infographics which the community knows, not what we know as statisticians. So there is a lot there to be done, and we should be seen to be proactive. So in our plan for national statistics development, all these things are streamlined, and they are there, and we have to follow them. So one of these forums, you look at the Gender Statistics Forum, these are ways of bringing us together so that we share the knowledge. And when we share the knowledge, today we don't talk about dissemination, we talk about utilization. What next after here? I understand in our neighbors in Kenya, they have done the unpaid care work, and they have collected data which has informed policy. They didn't sit. They went ahead and developed a care policy in Kenya. So what are we doing? This goes back to the ministry, the civil society. There is a lot. So we have to be seen to be proactive, translate the statistics and remove, otherwise it's like you light a candle and put it under the table. So how will people benefit from the light? The other issue is, I'm very glad the civil society, the Interreligious Council is coming on board. Yes, we do recognize them as an important stakeholders. We talk about ethics and integrity. Where we have to go beyond, thinking beyond gender statistics, I think it's not also good to have everyone here. The level of academia, the Vincent, when he says the R square is this, some of us get lost. For me, the gray hair is there. Things have gone. You get me? So we have people who have the policy issues at hand. We need to sit as a team. So those issues of ethics and integrity, we feel bad that the data is not there. But to some extent, we have collected a lot of data, especially about young people and the reproductive ages concerning behavior issues. And you go beyond that, and we even collect other background characteristics like the tribe, like the region is automatic, like even we have religion. So you find that we have collected data on reproductive health, sexual behavior, family planning. Maybe what we are doing is not demystifying it, looking at a certain segment and audience, like the faith-based organizations. And we pull out those things. What is it that they want? So it goes beyond us. The Gender Statistics Forum has to come up with all this. We at the Bureau, we have to start and look at the audience. We call it sectoral statistics or gender-based statistics. It can never be broad. So even the issue of behavior is coming on board, how we are going to unpack the Martha and Mary's whatever syndrome, and yes, a model, and take it beyond, and how do we get this message out? The way you tackle all this, I think, is very good, and it informs policy. I have liked the issues he has brought on board, the virtues and so many things maybe we don't collect, but they may be lying somewhere. The civil society has a lot of information. Yes, but what have we done? We are not sitting. The team here, which is in this room, we developed a citizen generated data toolkit. And this is basically to guide all those who are collecting data, whether at a lower level, whether at national level, because they have their needs. We can't be everywhere, but we have to guide. The fundamental principles of official statistics impact on us as a team, as producers and users. Data has to be of sound quality. You are doing an opinion poll, you just call your friends close to you, and tomorrow you are in the papers. Social media is all over. Is it statistically significant? Does it represent all the issues? You get me? So that's why that toolkit has been. Thomas, is it on our website? Yes, it is on the website, and there has been lots of discussions. I think what you are saying is that gender statistics team, please let us segment the audience. Let us look at the sectoral statistics. Civil society, when we have that toolkit, can we have more and more interaction with them? What are we going to do? So we need to unpack all this as an institution and as a forum, and then we come up with all these ideas and be able to move on and be able to inform policy at all levels. There is a lot to say, and I am mindful of the time I have, but I also take note that we are saying all this. We have a gender statistics committee, but possibly maybe we'll have to again revive it. We have kind of been in limbo. We are coming out of the working in the new normal, Zoom. Today we are now back face to face. There's been a lot. We are swinging back into action. And for this forum, I would like to see more. Why should we wait for a year? Annual Gender Statistics Forum. Let it remain Gender Statistics Forum. Possibly we should be meeting twice a year, or maybe every quarter. Don't wait to have 6 papers. Even you can do a Zoom when you have a paper, and it takes 40 minutes, people discuss, give you results, and that is done. So members, we are saying that we are going to improve the way we do work. We want to see more forums, because it is these synergies that bring us together, that we get educated, that we shall be able to utilize the data into our policies, and also work with the key implementers, the community development officers, are the engines at that level. So we have generated all these results. My brother here has given us the data from the UN, is it what? Open Data Forum. Yes, we are glad we have all this. How can we work? How can we blend this with the citizen-generated data? How can we work with civil society to improve this? Possibly we'll be seeing more and more of this, and also more frequent meetings. It shouldn't end here. But also the ministry, we are not leaving you behind. The National Planning Authority, we move together so that we see the utilization, we see this turning into action for results. Madam Chairperson, I beg to end my presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Helen. Could we have the DED, Mr. Nabongo, to come and close the workshop? But as we wait for him, could I have Mr. Otiek bring I have a board on the table as you prepare to come. You're ready? Okay, just a minute. Kindly, as you move out, please don't forget to pass. No, at the table. Because when he closes, it will be the end. We want you to identify with this activity now that you know, okay? And we want you to take your statement that I have the drive to innovate, integrate, and utilize gender studies. Remember to take pictures here. Thank you. I'll put it at the end. For whoever has the drive, please check. Can take more people. I see myself.
Thank you, Betty. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes when you've not been deliberate over something, you feel hesitant to apologize. But the norm is that you ought to apologize. So I was not deliberate at coming late, but I think I should apologize that I came late. I suppose all the protocol has been observed, and I want to join all those who welcomed you. The Executive Director sends greetings, was not able to be with us. Lots of competing issues that have had to hold him away, but he should have been here. Nonetheless, I have his message. And as much as it was to be presented at the beginning, it is still relevant even as we prepare to close. So I'll be presenting his message, and I'll join the normal practice whereby you deliver yours first, then you do the other one. And mine, unfortunately, is derived from the little bit that I had in the discussion. Some of this has already been talked about by our board member who was here. Yesterday we were at a retreat. We are preparing for census. Last 2 days we were. And during the presentations, one of the presenters presented their part. And trust me, the members in there said, you are speaking to yourself, because whatever you brought is your own jargon. Now, this is internal UBOS, and we are not communicating to ourselves internally. So he said we must be able to use plain English, because that is within our policy of communication. Because when you talk to the others, remember, they also have their jargon elsewhere in their professions. But when talking to you, they should use that which you understand. So the slang, Vincent is gone. The slang, which is core to a profession, I think should always be kept with the professionals. Because the only thing that I'd hoped to be hearing much more in here is the slang of gender. That should only be understood by the gender experts here. But we take note, we'll improve on how we communicate with statistics. Yes, I talked about the citizen generated. I think it is all about increasing the scope of the sources of data. But being that it's statistics, not just information, we try hard to look at the reliability and the methodology. You want statistics that once it's available today, possibly it will also be available tomorrow, and the other day that you can also establish trends. If something just hits up suddenly, sometimes it's difficult to say we are following that one up, because by the time you've documented, it is no longer relevant. And part of our values is that statistics must be relevant. But we take concern, and it's the reason the Bureau is looking into given into big data and largely investing into data science. I noted, and this is one of those things we normally have, when we present, we put so many ideas in terms of questions and less of solutions and possibly less of answers. It would be good sometimes when we present, we say, this is how we think we ought to do it. So it makes it easier for whoever is taking it up to move forward. As the Bureau, whenever we have this, we normally have rapporteurs, and we take note of the issues that come in terms of demand, either for increasing the scope of statistics, or the breadth of statistics, or the depth of the statistics. Then we go back and review. Now, the other areas, we always leave them to the other people. Ours, we concentrate on the statistics. I'm only hoping that when we get rapporteurs, we get others who document issues of policy, that we can also forward to the others to say, this is what came out, kindly follow up. Which takes me to one of the proposals by Director Helen, having regular gender statistics fora. I want to make a slight improvement on that one. If we can have more engagements, and I've been told there are a number of dialogues that take place in between, so they simply feed into this one, then possibly would be adding more value. Do a lot of dialoguing based on what has been discussed here. Then when you come, we review that at the last one, these are issues came out, where are we? And what are the new ones that we take on? That way we shall make progress on these matters of gender statistics having impact. Areas of what may be included into measurement of some of the statistics, and about, say, including say, mental distress as part of gender violence. We have the National Statistical Indicator Framework for Gender. What is it that we want to measure? If you look at those indicators, how do we want to improve them? I would possibly encourage that we look at those and be specific and make a submission that in this one, we think we can consider the following attributes to be used for measuring this one for completeness. That makes it quite interesting. So I know we'll be reviewing these. We regularly review. So in the process of review, I think we should be able to, and I think I'll take note of this, that we should be able to consult widely to see whether these indicators as defined still serve the purpose. But given that we are also sometimes strained by a lot on the desk, the engagement of other partners, especially those in research and academia, would help us to see how we can enrich these indicators, that when we look at the following variables, this extra possibly could add more value. How they do it, they know better. How they can come up with those models so that we can improve these indicators in terms of completeness of defining whatever phenomena they should be reporting on. The issue of monitoring data by CSOs and what others are putting forward, one of the areas that is so difficult is in as much as we have responsibility of coordinating and regulating the statistical system, the freedom to put out what people want, we cannot touch. But possibly what we can do is to comment, because that is part of the UN fundamental principles. that, colleagues, if you find something quite unbecoming and it appears to be a statistic, bring it to our attention and we should be able to respond and make a clarification, make a position. So that when people are using it, they use it knowingly that that is right or wrong, appropriate or inappropriate. Having said that, doesn't mean we run away from our responsibility of working with these other agencies to make sure that what comes out is right. And it has been echoed here that many of these have a lot of data, which possibly we are not tapping. During Statistics Week, we had an internal seminar, and one of the papers that was made by Mr. James Mwonge was the effect that we should consider taking our production of statistics to another horizon. Many of you have had, some of you could have participated when we were discussing the nutrition status and we look at the nutrition report. Now, this is one where data is picked from various actors and players, and the way it is managed and updated regularly, and it is fitting into what comes out as the statistics. So we don't get this from one survey, we don't get it from one undertaking, but this continuous production of data by different stakeholders, this data finds its way into the final data that is reported on. And I think this is what we need to be doing going forward. I know Thomas Rotor is here. This is part of their outreach programs which we must do in terms of increasing the usability and the participation in the data production and utilization. If we know what we are producing here contributes to the other product, along with others what they are producing, I think it increases the value of the statistics. Now, that was the essence of that production, that paper, and I think it is the way we want to try to go. That when you talk about these gender statistics, don't wait for what UBOS has done in a survey or the other, but what others are also producing elsewhere. We've tried this and we are still doing something on gender-based violence, GBV. It is still work in progress, but we think we are making progress. And later when we deliver, we should be seeing updated data, whether from the Ministry of Gender, from police, from hospitals, from wherever, feeding into the final product on GBV. So we believe this is what we should do. So with the NGOs and the CSOs, with a lot of data, we need to come together. And I think, again, we are saying it has to be deliberate. We'll take on with the responsible department or directorate to make this work out. Our director here, Honorable Mulengani, mentioned this, and I also heard it from Helen. I also want to say it, and with regret, that our stakeholders continue having challenges in accessing data. Apparently, it is like at every forum, this is the message. I think we are a learning institution. When we go back, the question to my colleagues is going to be, what is the problem? Why aren't you providing data? Are we simply good at producing, but we can't disseminate? Our mandate is produce and disseminate. But the Bureau is also being deliberate. We have a young section to do with dissemination and communication of data. And the person we are going to be handling very closely on this one is Betty. Can you stand up? It was deliberate that she's a statistician and she works with others who are not statisticians to make sure that data, because I think the change has been those who produce would always hold the data. When you want, they are busy producing other things. They have no time to go back to the data to give you what you want. So we said, let some other people, and you created another department of data capability. That's where she is. Data capability includes even another section for IT. So there should be no reason why people should continue saying we can't access data. We've made it policy. You finish producing from a survey, whatever, data shall be on the server. It will be archived and should be accessible. We came out with a stakeholder it is a client service charter. And it's very clear the process and how long it must take. And I think we are going to make sure, again, it is Betty, can we popularize this client charter? So that if anybody is failing on their part in UBOS, we hold them accountable. Because we committed. Really, you stand here and you feel sad and bad to talk as the authority of statistics when people can't access the statistics. Colleagues, we must wash this away from us. Every forum is complaining data can't be accessed at the Bureau. We are going to handle that. That's a promise. And one of the issues that I think I'll be requesting Betty to take on, we must invite, we're discussing gender. I think now we must discuss issues of data access and communication. So people can come out and give us ideas of how this can be made better. So that we hear from the users, so that we try to work towards the expectations. Otherwise, it is a bit of a problem. Some of us may stop standing in front because it will be shameful. Now I can deliver the message from the Executive Director. It is fairly brief, not as long as what I delivered. Like I say, the protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm grateful for this opportunity to address experts on gender issues and gender statistics. And I want to express our sincere gratitude to our government and the government of Uganda, to the development partners, especially the UN Women, for their continuous prioritization of gender issues and thereof the support, especially financial and technical. We thank you. I know much has been said, but I may singly reiterate or highlighting the progress, highlighting that the progress towards achieving gender equality is mixed. Have we moved forward or we are stuck? And we say that in as much progress has been made in some fields, there may be areas of concern that remain. As we discuss, according to the latest releases, it is evident that gender disparities are still prevalent. I guess the beauty is that we can report on them. According to the 2019-2020 Uganda National Household Survey, time spent on unpaid care work is disproportionately high among females compared to males. While females spent 10 hours more on unpaid care work than their male counterparts in a week. I was seeing his comments and I said, what happens if this could be the reverse? So that men spend more time on the unpaid care work. I don't know that it would become the issue, but we also know this is a measure for sacrifice, for patriotism, for commitment. So sometimes we look at it in that perspective aspect, that it is a measure of those values, other than the negative part that actually you're spending more time and it's negative. According to the National Labour Force Survey 2021, which we just released, women's participation in the National Labour Force has improved. And this is a positive that we see when you compare the National Household Survey. But of course, when you compare with the population figures, I think we still have somewhere to go. Because it was, for males, it is 57.9%, for females, it is 39.3%. And this is against a national average of 48.3%. There's improvement, and we believe that this should be continuing in that direction for increased gender participation in labor force. The negative in that report, possibly among a few others, is that the gender disparity in wages is still very glaring, where the women on average earn almost half of what men are earning. And what it takes to bring this to be at par, I think those who do policy and interventions should be able to follow through. The Bureau reaffirms commitment to bring gender statistics to the fore and continue to lead in the development of the gender statistics at the national level and inform the development of gender-friendly and inclusive policies. As you know, UBOS has been working closely and actively on the production and monitoring of gender statistics. We'll continue to do so. That was the call to make sure that we revive the advisory groups. Helen made mention of where we had gotten stuck, but we are going to be, again, very deliberate and very active. This is a wake-up call for the gender statistics advisory groups to be re-empowered after they have been restated following the launch of the third plan for the national statistics development. I also want to mention that Uganda recently adopted the UN resolution on the need to advance generation and use of complementary data, citizen-generated data. This again has already been talked about here. The question of the data that the individuals or agencies produce and use to monitor progress of different interventions so as to drive change on issues that affect them. To this effect, a toolkit has been developed. I think you've already been informed that's available on the website. We simply call upon those who are involved in production of data to make use of the toolkit. The essence here is that we want this data to come out in a manner that we deem it to be reliable and can be adopted and adapted into the production of national and official statistics. So we'll be glad when this is adopted by whoever is involved in generating data away from the official generation of data. I mentioned that a minimum set of gender indicators was agreed upon and published in the National Priority Gender Equality Indicators Report. So far, we have produced 2 reports, and we are working on the next version. The finalization of this shall be a consultative, so that what comes out is owned by all parties and all stakeholders. And we deeply acknowledge, therefore, the participation and cooperation of the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, School of Women and Gender Studies, Makerere University, and last but not least, possibly very important, is the UN Women for contribution in this initiative. This definitely has continued maintaining the pace towards harmonization of gender statistics across the sectors in the country. You heard we released the report, the Labor Force Survey Report 2021, and I'm glad to inform you that the team is now planning to compile a gender module out of this report. This report has extremely interesting findings, and this one just needs to set a date when you want to see this module, and this will help expedite the production. But it may be one of the best findings that you can discuss for quite some time. but also to keep you informed that the Uganda Bureau of Statistics is continues to undertake surveys and programs that continue to invite or to inform gender statistics. These include the Uganda Functional Difficulty Survey. This has to do with disabilities, to do with disability. The Uganda Demographic and Health Survey, the Peace and National Governance Survey, piloting the measure for women empowerment and equality that will be used in UBOS surveys and censuses. And of course, we have the mega one, which is the National Population and Housing Census 2023. And this one normally provides the big gender monograph that considers many more variables because of the size of the undertaking. This forum, I'm almost ending, is the 6th since 2017. And I want to mention that the first focus was on increasing availability and access to gender statistics for informed evidence policy, programming, and decision making. Now, without saying that one, I would love to see how we evaluate this very first objective of increasing availability and access to gender statistics. I think as we move forward to create others, I want us to review that. And I would say when I was preparing to read this, I said, now this one is disturbing. When somebody says we can't access, meaning that we failed even on the first one. So we want to make sure that we measure it better next time. Today being the 6th, paving the way for gender and equity data innovation, integration and utilization. I know we have heard from other data producers on how we can collaborate with them to produce relevant gender and equity statistics, meaning we have to take stock of the data issues and challenges in accessing, processing, and using gender statistics and recommendations to enhance utilization, with the aim of learning from experiences based on data innovations, approaches, and integration for better evidence and how gender statistics can be improved. Together we do this as a team, and on the part of UBOS, we shall play our part. Finally, we are the Bureau honored to serve the NSS, that's the National Statistical System. We remain committed to foster the development of gender statistics, promote collaboration among national, regional, and international statistical agencies, and assist all statistical producers to fully integrate a gender perspective in their programs and projects. I'll conclude by expressing appreciation for your participation at this forum, thanking you once again, and with special thanks again to our development partners for the financial support and making this possible. The Bureau is looking forward to working with you to adopt the new data innovations, integration, to promote the advancement of gender statistics, really taking forward a revised agenda for gender statistics. Thank you and wish you a very successful use of the takeaway from this forum. For God and my country, Chris Mukiza, Executive Director. God bless you.
I know it is lunchtime and I can't say much more, but I want to have some photo opportunities. That's if you have the drive, and I'll request our presenters, because they already have the drive, to innovate, to integrate, and to utilize, to first have a moment with our DED and the development partners. Kindly come and take a picture as you commit yourself that you have the drive. Or of course you already have, but, and Madam Helen, please join the team. Mr. Senono. No, I'll hold. Let me have somebody to help me hold. These ones have it, right? Please come. We can take 3 at a time. No, hey. Okay. Kindly, Joshua, we need this picture. They are pledging that they have the right to innovate. It's okay. So that's one of them. Thank you. Joshua, moving Joshua. Kindly. Thank you, DED and the UN Women Temple, the development partners, please. They are committing that they have the drive to utilize. I'm not coercing anyone. Thank you. We've been here now that we know solutions. Okay. Thank you. They have the drive. Thank you. Could I have the CS pause, please? Yes. Whoever is done with the picture can go for lunch in that order. It's okay, I'll hold it. The CS pause, and this will be followed by game. We shall all have an opportunity. CSOs, please, we are missing out the picture. CSOs, you don't want to be part of it? Okay. If you miss the front, you can have another. You can have thank you. We can have another thing with it, with CSOs. If you didn't really feel comfortable, you can stay in for her. These people have the drive to innovate. I'm having ministries, departments next. Please don't leave. Ministries. NPA, please don't leave. Your committee, right? It's okay. Hey, I'm also here. Are you game? This is gender and equity. Just a minute. No, this is gender and equity budgeting. I'm also into the picture. Okay. Kindly let's start the ministries. They are going. Okay. Kindly let me have the ministries, departments, and agencies. The ministries are here. Okay, it's okay. Thank you. Please, if you have any photo moments, you boss, you can have it. So much. You can. Yes. Kindly photo moments. Madam Pamela. And Thomas. Yes. Mr. Lutalo and Madam Pamela. Yes, why don't I be with Martin as well? Yeah. Let me